The VGC Study Committee will come to order. Clerk, if you'll take control.
I will now open the floor for nominations of chair. Do we have any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Senator Bryce Reeves to be the chair.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? I will now close the nominations and we will vote on the nominee. All those in favor of Senator Reeves say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Senator Reeves is chair, and I will turn the meeting over to him.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now take nominations for the vice chair, and I would nominate my colleague, Senator Delegate Kriesik. I was thinking Paul, and then I was thinking seeing Evan, but we'll make sure it's Delegate Kriesik, Paul Kriesik. I think so.
I'll second that nomination.
Motion's been seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations. I think we have, is that the only two votes we have to have, Madam Clerk? Okay.
No, electronic meeting, virtual meeting.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. At this point, we're going to take up the adoption of the virtual meeting policy. Ashley Benz, the committee counsel, will briefly brief that for us just for a second so we can understand what that means, but my recommendation is we use the policy that gives us the most latitude based on FOIA.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So under FOIA, in order to participate in electronic meetings or have individual remote participation, FOIA requires the public body, or this subcommittee rather, to adopt a participation policy, which is what we intend to do today. And as you said, if the subcommittee intends to utilize FOIA to the fullest extent, it would allow the individual participation by the members for instances such as disabilities of individual members, personal matters, medical conditions of the member's family, if a member resides more than 60 miles away from the meeting location, so on and so forth. So if that is the intent of the subcommittee today, we just have to take a recorded vote on that. There are limitations under FOIA. I will definitely put this up online after the meeting so that everyone can read the full extent of the policy. And after the recorded vote, this subcommittee will be able to partake in remote participation and all virtual public meetings.
Thank you, Ashley. Any members have a question about the meeting policy, virtual? I'll just take a motion on that.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and it's been seconded. Committee will vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
We'll do a roll call.
Okay, go ahead, Clerk.
Delegate Austin?
Yes.
Delegate Bulova?
Aye.
Senator McPike?
Aye.
Delegate Kriesik?
Aye.
Senator Reeves?
Aye.
Ayes 5, no 0.
Okay, I know there's a couple folks that got to go to another meeting. Thank you, Senator McPike, for being here. Make sure you get your form filled out, too. Little admin reminder to the rest of us on the dais, as folks might come in that are part of the committee. Just make sure you fill out your form and get that back to the clerk. All right, next we're going to move on to the overview of House Joint Resolution 10 by Delegate Kriesik and Senate Joint Resolution 12 by myself for last year. Ashley, if you want to take the comm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So House Joint Resolution number 10 and Senate Joint Resolution number 12 were both passed this past session, 2024 session, and essentially those resolutions continued were a continuation of the work that the subcommittee did last year under Joint Resolution 548. And in the resolution, it states that the Joint Subcommittee shall develop recommendations with respect to the laws of the Commonwealth and agency regulations related to legal forms of gambling, the feasibility of establishing the Virginia Gaming Commission to oversee and regulate all such legal forms of gambling other than the lottery, ways to increase funding to the Problem Gambling Treatment and Support Fund and for related efforts, and additional issues recommended by the Joint Subcommittee to study in relation to gambling and the regulation and oversight thereof in the Commonwealth. The resolution limits the Joint Subcommittee to 4 meetings for the 2024 interim and 4 meetings for the 2025 interim. It directs the Joint Subcommittee to complete its meetings for the first year, this year, 2024, by November 30th, and complete its meetings for the 2025 interims by November 30th as well. So like I said, it is a continuation of the Joint Subcommittee that we had last year, and this is the first meeting. We intend to have another meeting in June, and that is essentially where we are with that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ashley. Any members have a question about what our mission statement is? With that, I'm going to break the agenda just shortly, take Chairman's prerogative. I know the Vice Chair has a little something he would like to say, so Delegate Krusek, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ashley. So to recap, we have another 2 years, and I want to thank the General Assembly, Speaker, and the Senate Majority Leader for passing our joint resolutions to extend this subcommittee for an additional 2 years to complete our work. Doesn't mean that we will need all 2 years necessarily. It doesn't mean that we won't have some legislation ready for our next session, but it does give us the flexibility and the time that we need. And I want to thank you all and the members of this subcommittee for entrusting me to serve as your vice chair, and of course working with Senator Reeves. As chair of the ABC and Gaming Subcommittee, as well as being the chair of the Subcommittee on Public Safety and Transportation on Appropriations, much of my work as a delegate serving in this legislature has been focused on responsible and ethical gaming expansion in the Commonwealth. And the work that's incumbent upon us as legislators to support Virginians with gambling addictions is one of my big concerns. As you all know, in just a handful of years, we've introduced a lot of new gaming. We've got sports betting, online lottery, casinos, historic horse racing machines, live horse races, charitable gaming, and for a time we had the skilled gaming or the gray machines. We know that gaming expansion is a double-edged sword. It brings jobs, tourism, tax revenue to the Commonwealth, and with the charitable games, it does fund many charities that are helping millions of Virginians. But it also fuels gambling addiction, an impulse control disorder which affects approximately 2 to 3% of U.S. adults, or 4 to 6 million Americans of all ages, ethnicities, races, and genders. Senator Reeves and I have prioritized efforts to address this issue through the creation of the Problem Gambling Treatment and Support Advisory Committee and securing funds to aid the Commonwealth's Problem Gambling Fund. Everybody on this dais has been very supportive of that and knows that this is an important thing that we're doing. The importance of this work cannot be overstated of this subcommittee because we are looking towards creating a singular regulatory framework for gaming in the Commonwealth, which would ensure consistent and comprehensive oversight, eliminating gaps and discrepancies in regulations across different types of gaming. This unified approach would facilitate the implementation of robust education and support services, as well as effective monitoring and transparency, providing better protection for Virginia consumers. So it's my belief, and I think everybody agrees here, that this holistic approach to gaming oversight and regulation will better serve our Commonwealth's problem gambling efforts as well. So with the guidance of our subcommittee's independent consultant, I look forward to learning best practices from gaming states across the country and further investigating the approach that will serve Virginia best. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Krusek. Any other members have opening comments they'd like to give? Mr. Chairman, would you? Nothing? We're good? Okay. Paul, thank you again for that. My only comments going forward are we have a lot of work to do. One of the things that I think has really benefited us as a committee is the opportunity to work with the consultants that won the contract for this, and that is Guidehouse. And they're going to be next up in the presentation. I want to thank the entities that are part of that process that have given them the information and opened their doors so we can get a huge comprehensive look, 30,000-foot look at what regulations are and who does what, when, where, and how. And so today will be the first day, and many of you will probably see this report that they're going to present as well as the committee. So I think it's pretty important. I know they've been sharing with Delegate Kriesik and myself as they've been going along. We've been having telephone meetings, and I'm very encouraged about what they've found out. So with that, I would ask Guidehouse if you guys would come up and brief the committee. Welcome. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Joint Subcommittee. Thank you for having us here, and thank you for the introduction. My name is Colin Hood. I'm a director in Guidehouse's state and local government management consulting practice, joined by my colleagues Stan Hiller and Julie Weddick, who are helping lead this engagement. For those of you not familiar with Guidehouse, we're a global management consulting firm of about 17,000 practitioners. Our leg, of course. Is this better? Is this more clear?
Can the audience hear okay? All the way in the back?
Is this better?
Okay.
Okay, absolutely. So as I mentioned, Guidehouse is a management consulting firm headquartered in Northern Virginia. So we're about 17,000 practitioners, about 4,000 of which live in Virginia or the greater Washington area. So we're very excited to have the opportunity to support this effort. One of our core capabilities is supporting state governments as they think through large operating model changes and transformations. And we've been really excited to be engaged. The goal of today's presentation is rather simple. It's really to introduce you all to the process that we're going through, provide an update on our work over the last few weeks, and share some insight into the deliverables that we'll be presenting to this committee in future meetings, and certainly to answer any questions that you all have. We don't today have any recommendations or specific findings to share. It really is introductory in nature, but we are really open to your feedback as we continue through this engagement and look forward to the conversation. We want to provide some insight into the consolidation considerations that we are working under, the different dynamics that we're applying to our analysis, and certainly the scale of consolidation that's been included in our contract and our scope of work. I want to provide an introduction to that as well, and certainly conclude with some next steps. I also want to thank and reinforce the chairman's thank you to the agencies who've been critical in this process, and certainly that's the lottery and VDAX and ABC and tax and the Virginia State Police, among many others, and certainly the Horse Racing Commission as well. They've been critical in our analysis up until this point, and we'll continue to collaborate with them through the process. Our engagement is broken into four distinct parts. The first is really focused on benchmarking. Certainly, like Virginia, this has been an emerging industry across the country, and states have handled this in a variety of different ways. This was one of the core components of JLARC's analysis when they completed this work a few years ago. States have had to handle this in an ad hoc manner. As new emerging forms of gaming have come on board, many states have had to put them in an existing agency in order to implement them and launch them successfully. Some states are a little farther ahead in thinking through a centralized gaming authority of sorts, and we're going to speak to that in a moment. And others are a little farther behind, just beginning a similar process that Virginia is undertaking. Another interesting component of benchmarking is really the analogies. Very few states are taking on the same complexities that Virginia is taking on in terms of gaming functions. There's a large number of gaming types, and each state has taken on different industries depending on demand and how the states have chosen to move forward in those areas. We're beginning our cost-benefit analysis. As we think through the different options of this new gaming commission, we want to make sure that we've got a strong hold on both the costs and the benefits of those different operating models. This is really the core foundation of our work, is outlining and quantifying those costs. Today, we want to introduce you all to the layers of analysis that are the foundation of that cost-benefit work that we'll be presenting at the next meeting. Following the documentation of those trade-offs, we'll be moving into our recommendations phase, which will be sharing recommendations on how we view the Commonwealth should move forward on both the regulatory and oversight structure for legal gaming in Virginia as it relates to those operational components. And what I believe is the most important element of our work is the implementation roadmap. Once we've developed a recommended model to move forward, we'll document a roadmap on how to transition from the current state to that future state model. This is often the area where state governments struggle the most and face the most challenges. We often see a phased approach to the implementation of this work, and this roadmap will provide those options and take into account other considerations, such as the opportunity costs of making changes to existing functions, also the actual quantitative and fiscal costs of those moves. It's our anticipation to wrap up these deliverables and to share those with this committee throughout the summer. This is a map of the current gaming landscape in Virginia, and I know you all have seen these figures in various settings in the past. These are snapshots in time. They include 12-month periods, and full disclosure, the time periods in the annual reporting on these functions do not have direct overlap. So these numbers come with significant nuances. Not all of these numbers are reported on a consistent basis as well. We did want to include it to emphasize findings that have come out of similar efforts in the past in this area, that Virginia really is taking on a complex and quickly moving industry when it comes to operationalizing gaming. This chart would have looked much different a few years ago. It's our anticipation it will look much different when we look at this in 5 years in terms of the total handle in millions that the Commonwealth is facing. And also, if you look on the right, that $1 billion figure is really net revenue, and we think that figure will change significantly as well. When we think about the relevance to our work, thinking about the operating model, we recognize it's important to build an operating model that's scalable and that can handle new gaming types over the next few years. And as we outline those different components, you'll see that as a consistent theme through the process. Today, 3 agencies are managing these gaming operations. It's about 160 staff across those state agencies are focusing on that today. As we look at our operating model, it will not be purely based on this particular point in time and the existing demand and regulatory capacity of those agencies. We'll also be working with you all to forecast the growth that we anticipate in these areas. The last comment on this slide that I think is of particular importance is looking at just the volume of some of these areas. You'll see some of the legacy functions closer to the top in lottery, and you'll see some of the newer functions scattered throughout, including historical horse racing, which really truly does face a large volume of handle, and that certainly comes with operational and regulatory challenges that we'll take into account in our operating model design. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to pause and see if there's any questions at this point in the presentation.
Paul.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to thank you, Colin, for this graphic alone. I mean, this is a good example of what we don't ever see. We've never seen this. We all know intuitively, we know what's out there, but just putting it in one place together is really helpful. And also, this is the kind of thing that will, once it's under one umbrella, will be much easier to manage. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And a thank you again to the agencies who have supported us in pulling together these metrics. Okay, great. And as I mentioned, this is purely a snapshot in time, and we fully anticipate this will continue to grow, right? And I think only reinforces the importance of having a strong, sustainable, and scalable operating model. Currently today, I mentioned 160. That includes a large number of vacancies and certainly agencies who are having to go above and beyond to operationalize these regulations. Okay. The next slide is fairly academic in nature, in full transparency. As we think about strong and successful organizations, and especially ones that have a regulatory mission, we think of several considerations. And the reality is each of the operating models that we will analyze as part of this engagement have trade-offs. And there'll be a number of decisions that this organization, this group will have to make when deciding to move forward. So we want to be very transparent about the level of those trade-offs that we're considering. As you look at the top, you'll start in the current state today, which is fairly decentralized. And that's not only when you look at it specifically to Virginia, but when you compare it to peers across the country. The options that we are analyzing for you all's consideration move all the way to a fully centralized model with several options in between. And there are a series of benefits that come with centralization. There's also a series of costs and things to consider. Certainly in a decentralized model, it is the easiest to have minimal potential conflicts of interest. Whereas each organization has its own governance, each organization has its own distinct leadership and reporting structure. There's also limited short-term transition costs in maintaining the current state. As we're all aware, there's also significant risk in maintaining the current state, and hence our focus here today. As you move to a centralized model, a lot of the benefits become very traditional in nature. Certainly economies of scale, those range from the workforce. There are similar jobs being conducted across these gaming functions. There's a number of advantages to bringing those groups together, from recruitment to cross-training to more sophisticated management of these large pools of individual functions. These are all things that are very traditionally looked at in any sort of consolidation exercise. Technology is another area where there's a lot of opportunity for benefit in a centralized model. And we will be outlining the impacts of those technology or potential technology changes as a part of our work. Certainly, a centralized model provides opportunities to streamline and standardize the core business processes of this function, whether it be licensing, investigations, auditing today, all being managed in a silo. While having an opportunity to bring those together in a centralized format, you have an opportunity to better benchmark against industry-leading practices. There are other opportunities that we believe will be benefits of a centralized model, including the opportunity to easier facilitate a statewide problem gambling strategy. That's something we'll be focusing on in our work. I know that those things exist today, and thank you to those organizations who have been meeting with us and providing us that data. That'll certainly be a core focus of what we look at. We've talked about in this meeting today the importance of a single source of specialized information and resources, and really a central policy authority in this area. Another benefit we'll be analyzing as a component of a centralized model. Transparency, accountability, and the ability to scale to emerging gaming types are also critical components that we'll be focusing on. I think this last bullet in particular is certainly important. We know there's a lot of uncertainty over the next few years about the pace of emerging gaming types, which emerging gaming types will come on board. And it's our task to look at an organization that can sustain and scale a variety of gaming types in the future. We'll also look at the cost. So it's our goal to quantify the transition to these different options. Certainly, the current state comes with the fewest additional cost, but there are economies of scale that we will weigh against these new costs in our work. We will also weigh the importance of conflicts of interest and how to effectively manage those. Of course, the more you centralize, the more you open up opportunity for conflicts of interest, and we'll weigh those different models against that lens. Our roadmap will be very specific around what we estimate to be the transition cost and the coordination effort to shift these current employees and these current focuses into a new organization. Okay. Mr. Chairman, just opening it up for any questions on this content. Okay, great. So what you will see in front of you are a variety of different options across a broad scale of centralization. If you start at the top, this is the closest view into what we have today, which is a decentralized model. And as you move down the slide from top to bottom, we do continued consolidations. We're just calling them, for the purposes of where we are in our engagement today, consolidation options. As you'll see at the bottom, this is a fully consolidated model. We're still conducting our benchmarking work. For your awareness, we picked 7 peer states that were the closest to Virginia in both population, gaming type, and anticipated gaming demand. And we've done deeper dives on those 7 states. What you'll see and what we've learned from the benchmarking to date is most peer states and most states across the country are landing somewhere in the middle. Right? And you'll see peer states in the right column that are aligned to these options. As you move into option A, which is one step beyond consolidation, that includes an independent lottery, a consolidated Virginia Gaming Commission, including new gaming types, and also maintaining an independent racing commission, focused on live horse racing and other related gaming types. I think one nuance is in this option A, HHR would be a component of the Virginia Gaming Commission, and that's just based off the similarities between HHR and some of these other gaming types.
Mr. Chairman.
Illegable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a quick question, hate to jump on in. So with respect to those 7 peer states and the different organizational models, which I guess it's good that we have those out there, how many of those were actually purposefully crafted as opposed to being organic, right? So I want to make sure that we're comparing ourselves to something that was thoughtful. and not just developed over time like we have, where there might not be a rationale for it?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. And Delegate, we will follow up the specifics there. I'm looking at my colleagues if you know offhand. Yeah, we'll look into that and confirm. I just want to speak with certainty. I think there are several that are a little farther ahead who have thought through some of these components. One example is Maryland. They do have a distinct horse racing commission. That's an organization that has consolidated their lottery and most other forms of gaming, but we'll come back with those specifics as a part of our benchmarking report. That's an excellent point. Great. One thing we can do is, I think through this, is we'll put these benchmarks against a timeline as well. I think it's important to see when these changes were made. Everyone is moving at a quick pace, as you can imagine. So I think it's important that we put that against a recent timeline. Yeah, absolutely. Benchmarking on this project, it's a very standard tool we look at when approaching this. It's been unique here because of the gaming types. So a lot of these peer states actually do not have live horse racing, for example. Some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them also don't have HHR. So there are not a lot of situations where it is an apples to apples comparison. Our benchmarking report does go into that level of detail. So fortunately, you all will have that information available. But we're trying to look for a mix of operational components, which really is driven off of volume. Okay. As you move down to option B and option C, you'll see just additional consolidation. As I mentioned when I was walking through the outline of the engagement, it's our intent to do the analysis for each of these options. At this particular stage, we do not have a recommendation in a particular direction. We're still in the phase of making sure we have a really strong pulse on both the benefits and cost of each of these and pulling those together. I think at that point it'll be fairly clear on where our recommendations will go and how we put that out against an implementation roadmap. But we're really at this point driving into the details of these options. An additional decision point that's a component of our study is this last row on the slide, independent agency versus executive branch agency. We have taken a particular focus on that in our benchmarking. There are operational impacts, of course, to that decision, and we will be including that in our recommendations as well. In today's environment and the current state and this decentralized model towards the top, some agencies, of course, are executive and others are independent. That will also be a component of any sort of implementation roadmap, some of the challenges that we'll need to thoroughly think through in making that transition.
Great. Any other questions on that chart? No?
Great.
Well, I think the more options you give us, the better. And then we as a body have to decide what are the primary options that we need besides TIMAC to get it and the challenges we'd have to do it. But the more options you give us, I think would probably be better for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, that's all we prepared. Any additional questions, Mr. Chairman?
Any members have any additional questions on anything? So your next report will be, did we decide that already, Ashley?
Mr. Chairman, I think you'll probably be presenting something at the next meeting. Excuse me, the next meeting on the 7th.
That's our intent. So it's our understanding that there's another meeting on June 17th, so we'll be prepared at that time to share our findings to date. So our cost-benefit analysis will arrive prior to that meeting for you all's review and to get initial feedback. It's our intent to then come share our findings with a broader group.
Perfect. Great. All right, thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. It's great to see you in person. Delegate Creasy.
Colin, maybe stay up there for a second. I just want to ask you a quick question. I know you're talking about the peer states, the 7, but what about, and ours is somewhat unique with everything that we have going on, but what about other, just some of the bigger states that are out there? What are they doing well, and what are you still looking at that?
We are. So we've looked at 48 states in total. So we'll provide that full analysis. We have tried to narrow for the purposes of comparison to those 7 peer states. And we've actually had conversations with them. So that was in the sense of prioritization, but we are looking across 48 states.
Thank you. I would bet nobody, no pun intended, but we're not taking any money on this bet. But I would bet that nobody in this audience realizes that we have 3 gaming regulators, lottery, VDAX, and VRC, and each one of those regulators regulates a different online sports or online betting format. Of course, there's iLottery, and there's there's sports betting under lottery, and then there's the simulcast racing online for VRC, but there's also the fantasy sports under VDAX. So it's just it's all spread out all over the place, and obviously there's some synergy there that's missing.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for your presentation. We look forward to the June meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
As a side note, if there's any members of the committee that have questions to get to those folks, just email it to Paul or myself, and we'll get them to them and get you answers, especially yours, Dave. Okay. Next, we have presentation impact on unregulated gaming, something near and dear to my heart. Matthew, I'm probably butchering your last name. Let me see if I can try it. Hortenstein, General Counsel, J&J Ventures. Welcome.
Thank you. Again, my name is Matt Hortenstein. I serve as General Counsel to J&J Gaming. We're a 95-year-old family-owned company that operates in 7 of the 12 states that have some form of regulated distributed gaming in their state. We do not operate in any state that doesn't have some form of regulatory scheme. Some of those states are true VGT or video gaming terminal states. Oftentimes that is also defined as a VLT, a video lottery terminal, somewhat of a synonymous term there. We also operate in those states that have some form of regulated distributed gaming in the form of skill games, such as Georgia and Nebraska, that have made a policy choice in their state to go a different route as to the device. I think this will... Yeah, so we wanted to help drive this discussion and assure members of this committee that as a leader in distributed gaming, we are very much in support of a best-in-class regulatory structure here in the Commonwealth. Distributed gamers, gaming companies that are leaders in the field nationally desire a casino-level regulatory structure with it proper enforcement, and we're pleased to see that the Commonwealth is headed in that direction. I think, though, that some of the policy discussions in this past session were distracted a bit by the type of device, and we got bogged down a little bit in that discussion. And I want to take an opportunity to dispel some of the myths with regard to that. What is a game of skill versus a game of chance? We would suggest to you that's a distinction without a difference. For example, my company operates both device types. For example, in Nebraska, we operate a true game of skill by their definition, while in in Pennsylvania or Illinois, we run a true game of chance by that definition. There's a lot of myths out there about which one is more predatory than the other, which one is the better game experience. A lot of different opinions about that, and I just wanted to share with you today some of those topics. And this is a picture of what a skill game world looks like. You can tell it's very difficult to discern, is that a true slot game that you would see on any Vegas slot floor, or is that a game of skill? The question is really the fact that technology has gone so far that the law and the legal standards just simply haven't caught up with the changes in technology. And so it's very important in the Commonwealth here, as you proceed through your regulatory structure, that you identify those definitions. And two, it's important that you identify them both in your criminal code and your regulatory code. And the key test that this boils down to is known as the dominant factor test, or the any chance test. This is the subterfuge that some manufacturers have gone through to create a game of skill versus a game of chance. They're oftentimes relegated into two classes, a Class 3 gaming device. That's typically something that's operated on a random number generator. That's your VGTs and VLTs. They typically fall within that category. You also have a Class 2 device, which is typically based on poker math or bingo math. You'll typically have a bingo, electronic bingo game, electronic pull tabs, gaming devices of that. They all operate off of a different definition or a math model. But the key battleground seems to be in most states the difference between a game of chance and a game of skill. Game of chance, those Class 3 slot devices operate off of a mathematical algorithm generated by a random number generator. This automatically calculates the outcome of the spin, outcome of the game. Your return to player or your RTP is typically between 88 and 92% on those types of true slot games. With a game of skill, it's a different math model. It's typically referred to as a cycle math model. If you can imagine a deck of cards, and you had 100,000 cards, and interspersed through that deck of cards were your win spins, that's a way to think about a cycle math model. It comes out in numerous different forms. There's nudge games, pick a spot games, choose wild, follow me, all sorts of different games. We really don't have time today to go through the inner workings of all those games, but there's a website there that has a really good explanation of how the skill game operates. And just very quickly, the Follow Me game is one that we operate in Nebraska, by way of example. The way that plays, it's a typical slot game, and if you lose, you have the ability to hit the Follow Me button. And you can play a game, oftentimes it's like a Simon Says game, and you would have the opportunity through your skill to play Simon Says. If you win enough times, you would win 105% of your bet, and then you can go back and play your slot game again. So these are different methods that manufacturers have come up with to meet the standards set in that particular regulatory state to meet its definition of a skill game. There is a gray area, though, that exists in those states that don't have some form of regulation or some form of definition to tell us what the answer is. So what's the outcome of that? And I picked Illinois to give you some idea of what the scope of gameplay really is. One of the key factors I think you're going to want to address here in the Commonwealth as you move forward in any type of distributed gaming model is transparency. You need to have publicly available data so the consumers and the Commonwealth understand what gaming outcomes really are. In Illinois, you can go to that website, and for any year during the time that Illinois has had distributed gaming, you can see the real facts on gameplay. So in 2023, there were between 44,000 and 47,000 VGT positions spread out through almost 8,400 small businesses, bars, restaurants, hotels, truck stops, convenience stores. The amount played number was a little over $32 billion. The amount won was a little over $29 million. That created a return to player of 91.6% across the platform. So what does that really mean? Keep in mind that amount played is the number of times you play a game. So you might be playing house money, right? If you put in $100 and you won $100 on your first spin and you kept playing it out until we went to zero, that goes into that amount played number. The funds in number is the actual number that cash that went into the bill acceptor, into the games themselves. That number was a little over $11 billion last year. The funds out, the payout to players was a little over $8 billion. That created a 26% cash on cash hold. That's the number that exists. The remainder is called net terminal income, a little over $2.8 billion. That was distributed in Illinois on a third, and a third basis, $980 million to the state in the form of a tax dollar, and the retailer, a little over $950 million, and the terminal operator, my industry, $950 million. There's, again, that $950 million in Illinois was distributed through almost 8,500 local retailer locations and about 80 terminal operators. So that gives you a sense of what the market really looks like, and you can identify through a very transparent website what the numbers look like and what the play really looks like, and you can also measure what the public demand, the public interest is for this form of entertainment. if you have that type of a system. The key to this element is a central control system, which we strongly advocate for you to have in any distributed gaming type structure. That is operated by the state, and all the cash that goes into that system is accounted for electronically. All the play is accounted for electronically. Again, no pun intended, but you cannot game the system if you have a central control system that creates that electronic footprint. No matter what, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, can you also tell us what other benefits are there to a central gaming control system?
Yeah, I think there are three key elements of a central control system. One is that ability to create an electronic footprint, so you know as a Commonwealth you're getting every tax dollar you're supposed to get. The second one is you cannot manipulate the game. That game is attached to that central control system, and if a third party entered into the game itself, opened the control door, tried to manipulate the game, it would shut the game down. You also can account for all the locations of the games themselves. If you disconnect that game from the system and move it into another location to engage in illegal gaming, the game system would know that. So you can't manipulate the game nor move the games around. And then the third position or importance of that model is the retailer then also knows what they're supposed to get. There's no way to gyp the retailer, the small business owner, out of their cut. So those three elements are the most important in that system.
Following up, so what about ID checking and making sure that people of age 21 and up are using the machines, and that it stops younger people? How does that work with this centralized gaming system? And also for those people who are on the who are banned from playing because of their the problem gamblers and their.
Sure. So there's a couple of different ways you could approach that problem, and different states have approached that from a policy perspective in different ways. The central control system can be a part of a mitigation system for underage gaming and problem gaming. You could create a regulatory structure for self-exclusion, for example, where you could have a player's card. You could not play the game unless you activate it with a card swipe. That would be one potential way to address that. And obviously, if you were under 21, you wouldn't be eligible to get the card. If you were on the self-exclusion list, you would not be eligible to keep your card, or your card could be deactivated. That would be one possible regulatory structure you could put into place. Some other states have created where all the gaming activity has to be in a separate segregated room, where you have a controlled point of entry into that area, where you would have to use your identification card, state ID, driver's license to access into that room to play. And obviously, if you're under 21, you couldn't enter into the room. Then they bolt onto that surveillance systems that have facial recognition, so that if you're on this is the Pennsylvania model, where you enter into that area, the facial recognition camera would identify you as a person on the self-exclusion list, and then the attendant would ask you to leave as being a self-excluded person. So there's several different models and paths forward that you could choose. There are positives and negatives to each one of those. Those are two that come to mind.
Mr. Chairman, so do you see any way to do those 3 or 4 items that you've mentioned that are very that are helpful with the central control system? Can you have a self-exclusion program without a central control system?
I suppose that you could. I think it would be something that would be very difficult to police. No sense in having self-exclusion if it doesn't work. So I think you have to put in mechanisms or tools, if you will, to allow the industry to self-police itself on these topics. If you don't have a central control system, that would be a big tool that would be left out of the arsenal to address those problems.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Delegate Bova.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did have a question with respect to the centralized system, and I know we're talking about in this presentation skill games versus video game terminals, and what we're not doing here, at least what I hope, is deciding whether we're going to go down either of these paths, since this is really about how we're managing the overall process. But I guess if you're looking at what could come in the future, this is useful. I guess my question is with respect to the centralized system, for states that do this, are they able to handle all the different silos that we have, right? And so, we're looking at merging the infrastructure. And so when you do have these centralized systems, is it a streamlined one system that covers casinos, it covers lottery, it covers, skill or VGTs, or do you wind up with duplicative systems?
To my knowledge, there is not a singular system that handles every segment of the gaming industry. I'm not aware of one that exists that is that broad. There could be, and I'm just not aware of it, but I'm not aware of that. Most of the time, there are industry-specific issues to address that are unique to sports betting or unique to distributed gaming or casino gaming. And so the system has to account for that, those business differences. So I would think that you would probably have to have separate central control systems for each segment of the business. But I think they could be regulated by or overseen by a single commission. I know in Illinois and Pennsylvania that although they have a separate lottery division, they have a single gaming commission.
Great. And Mr. Chairman, if I could, and I guess this is more for our consultants, as you look through how we would consolidate or do consolidation, I assume you're also going to be diving into how you would structure a centralized system. Since I think that's obviously going to be a crucial component of this, we want to make sure that it works well together, understanding the complexities and different paradigms of each of the things, but would want to make sure that that was a seamless process.
Agree. Thank you, Della Baldwin.
I think to bolt onto that line of questions, I think something else that would be very important for you is to link up the regulatory enforcement piece with your local law enforcement. They need to work hand in glove together. Many states have holes or loopholes in their criminal code and their regulatory code. They don't work together. So I think as you move forward, that would be an important thing for you to examine, is to make sure they work together. And then on top of that, you also have to have teeth in this enforcement process. It's important that the local county prosecutor be able to work hand in glove with your attorney general. This is a statewide scheme of regulation. Making those work together, I think, will be very important. And I would also suggest how you fund that enforcement mechanism. The industry should be a partner in funding that mechanism. And I know in Illinois that's something that we very much are in favor of. So to close the loop on that issue, again, I think whether it's a skill game, so-called skill game, or a so-called Class 3 device, we're getting bogged down on this device selection. If the Commonwealth chooses to pick one over the other, fine by me. We exist in both of those regulated environments. I would just suggest to you that creating consumer choice is probably your best bet with respect to what device they want to choose, what device the consumer and the player wants to choose. There's obviously a demand in our world for gaming. Let's let the consumer pick where they would choose to play a skill game or a Class 3 game or an electronic pull tab game or a Keno game, whatever it is, it's a device. They are all running on some form of a math model with an RTP and a guaranteed payout. That's how these games work. So which one you pick, we would just suggest you open this up to be a fair and regulated, open competition marketplace. And I think you'll get the best result. In particular, you'll get the best result out of your revenue generation. If revenue generation is important to you, maximum competition is the way to go. So we also think that your regulatory structure needs to have the proper mitigation, the proper guardrails to prevent predatory conduct and to prevent the bad actors from entering into this gaming space. We all remember the days back in the 60s and 70s when the so-called mob ran the casinos, right? We've all seen the movies. But we went through that process in this country to squeeze out the bad actors. Distributed gaming is no different from that. We need to make sure that bad actors cannot enter into that gaming space. We feel like we're a leader in the distributed gaming marketplace. We want robust regulation. We want to have proper compliance mechanisms in place. The next slide here is actually from the American Gaming Association, which we're a member of. And it lays out, I think, in one slide what the importance of a regulated gaming world versus a non-regulated gaming world. We need responsible gaming mechanisms that hold the industry accountable for proper and responsible gaming, just like we do in the alcohol industry. Proper licensing and background investigations, proper consumer protections. We need to make sure that players know they have a fair game to play and that they're going to be paid out when they win. We also need proper game testing. Companies like GLI and other similar gaming companies that certify the game, the device, to make sure that it meets your standard that you choose to implement. We need to have secure gaming equipment. That goes back to that central control system. And finally, we need to make sure there's proper protocols in place for anti-money laundering protocols and anti-tax evasion protocols. This is something that we deal with commonly in the industry. Those of us that participate, whether you're a casino, sports betting, distributed gaming, in that market segment, we all have to participate in this AML protocols, and it's very important to keep bad actors out of the system. And then finally,
I've just got a quick question for you, though. You've talked a lot about end-use operators, and there's a little bit of difference, I think, between an operator and distributor and a manufacturer. What other states have in place regulatory authority? They put a lot of emphasis on operators, right? We all kind of went through this with charitable gaming. We learned more than we ever wanted to. And one of the things that I've noticed is that we don't have a whole lot of regulations on distributors and manufacturers. Some manufacturers will just sell the machines. They're not responsible for how they're played. That's our problem in Virginia, right? Either has a sticker or it doesn't. Cops have a hard time figuring out what's legal, what's not legal, because we haven't decisively made a decision on who's staying, who's going, and all that sort of stuff. But I'm curious to know, what are some of the regulations for manufacturers and distributors, to hold those distributors that are selling those machines to these gas and go places and kind of getting somebody on the hook for them, putting them in their store, and they're not hooked up, they're not regulated, none of that stuff.
That's a good question. So a couple of different models in the U.S. for that in the distributed gaming world, where there's a two-tier system concept and a three-tier system concept. We would suggest that the three-tier concept is the one you should probably seriously consider. The three-tier concept, you have a licensed manufacturer who sells the games into the system to the terminal operator, who's the second tier, who then operates, manages the system and those games. They actually own, operate, manage the actual devices. They're responsible for all the tax collection and remittance. They're responsible for all the cash management and the machine management. They, in turn, place those machines into the retailer, who has no economic input into the system. They are the host, if you will, the creator of the entertainment venue. That's the third tier. They're a licensed entity too. So all three tiers in that structure are licensed entities and have obligations under your regulatory structure. The key for the manufacturer, to answer your question in that model, is they have to get that game certified by an independent certification lab, typically a GLI or other similar company. Then that is approved by your gaming commission, whether that be your lottery commission or your gaming commission, whatever pathway you choose. Yeah. So then, and then they would identify that game electronically and by serial number and sticker or attached device. Then they put that game into the terminal operator's hands. The terminal operator then is really sort of the internal police officer. They're the ones who make sure that all those games are distributed out to the retailers appropriately in the right spots that match. And then, of course, match up to the regulations, and then your inspectors would come in on the go-live date, make sure that everything is appropriate. And then when you connect that up with your central control system, that's your last line of defense. If that game is not recognized by the system, it won't turn on. You can't play the game. I hope that answers your question. Second, there's a two-tier model too, which you eliminate the terminal operator out of that. That you have typically a governmental entity like a lottery that then sells the games through the manufacturer into the system. It's a two-tiered model.
Chinese send it, they put it up,
Yeah.
put it in a strip center, and 3 months later it's gone. So
Yeah, I'm not familiar with any. We don't operate in any state that has.
I understand.
Model. Yeah. Oregon, West Virginia are two examples of a two-tier system by way of example. So the last slide I've got here, and then I'll open it up for more questions, is what does this cost? This again is an AGA slide that I think is from 2021 or 2022. It looks like may have been updated, but it's about a $13.3 billion tax loss position. For the United States. They estimate that there's 580,000 unregulated skill games or gray games, whatever you want to call them. Again, I would just stress to you that I wouldn't get bogged down in the device. The devices are really, they're kind of all the same in a way. That's a different, they function differently, but they're all based on a math model. And it's a game of entertainment. So. With that, I'll turn it over to any more questions that you have.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
We've been a non-distributed gaming state, if you will. Our idea was when we opened up for casinos and historical horse racing with the Rosie Gaming Emporiums, which would be investments in the community, especially the community surrounding those entities, and this is a sea change. Of course, we've had that 1 year of legal gray machines out there, skill games, but this is a big decision to make, right? Where we want to go in the future of Virginia, and with gaming in Virginia, and that's why I think that what we're doing as a subcommittee is figuring out how to proceed and how to get all of this gaming regulations, a regulatory approach in one unified regulatory approach, I guess, is what we're doing. And so this is why I'm glad you guys came today to hear this and to learn more. At the June meeting, we'll have other types of gaming options for you to learn about, and some of it will be distributed and some will not be. But there's a lot. You can see you could really go down a rabbit hole with some of these issues, because we've got it seems like there's 3 different kinds of machines out there. There's the skill games, and there's different kinds of skill games. There's these VGT games. There's also the pull tab, the electronic pull tab machines that the charitable games have, and then there's the casino slot machines. And so just trying to get your head around all the differences and which ones are better, safer, easier to regulate, and also provide income to the businesses and to the people who work there and to the state is kind of daunting. But we're going to try to work that through over the next few meetings, and I hope you all will enjoy and learn with us as we go forward. And thank the chairman and the committee for all the hard work. And we look forward to Colin and his presentation in June. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Delegate Reese. Delegate Austin.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thank you, Vice Chairman Krezek, for your work with this commission. This is very important. The information provided today is very enlightening, and it just further highlights the importance of our work, and I think we're on the right path. So I thank you, too, for your leadership in putting legislation forward. So thank you. Very good work.
Good. So we're at the portion of the agenda where we're going to open it up for public comment. If anybody would like to come speak to the commission, you're welcome to step up. We're going to limit you to about 5 minutes because I know these gentlemen have some other places they have to go today as well. So if there's no one who wishes to speak, okay. Bueller? Anyone? Bueller? All right, folks, we'll get the message out for the next one. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.